mic'd up. Everything's good. You look good. Background looks good.
Ready?
We're ready.
All right. Hear me?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. My name is Jim Spodek. I own the building that Thomas Holmes rented at 506th Street, which was called Park 6th. I had originally rented that to Jim McCann and Tina Evergreen, who originally wanted to start a salsa club. And going back now, thinking about when they applied for their liquor license, they were given a multitude of things they had to do to acquire their license. And I can remember Tina saying to me, I don't think they like Spanish people. And neither one of them were actually Hispanic, but she had run the Milwaukee Latin Fest, and of course Jim was an attorney. During the process, they finally got the license after numerous times to the committee. And I can remember the committee saying, we're going to probably help and try to diversify. That was their code word for letting Hispanic people come in. But it was a salsa club. These people spend $200 on their shoes to dance. But during the process, the two of them broke, their relationship disintegrated, business relationship. And McCann then had the lease, and he then hired Thomas Holmes to operate the club. And Thomas Holmes came in, and he was, he's a good operator. He ran the, he had events at the Pabst Theater in Milwaukee, and I had no problem with him operating the club. And things went along fine. I really didn't pay much attention to it. He paid his rent, and everything went along fine. All of a sudden I started to get these violations in the mail, that the building needed to have larger street numbers, it had to have paint, it had to have the windows cracked. So I started having court dates. I had to show up at court, and then pretty soon I'm in court, and eventually I went 13 times to court within a year's period of time. I realized about halfway through, when I had been in front of this kangaroo court where they just, the assistant city attorney would come up with this claim I needed to tuck point or to paint the door, or, I used to make a joke that if the potato chip bag blew up against the building, I'd get a fine and I'd be called into court. But I did, I think it was about halfway through, I'm in court, and I had met the building inspector prior to going to court saying, is there anything on this building you want done? Because I want to end this, I'm done with this, and windows were being broken. I never had windows broken, but now the windows were being broken on this building. So I would replace the window, and of course I'd get an order and a fine for it. I then got to court, and I'm after the building inspector I talked to, I thought, well, this will be the end of it, and he actually was in the courtroom also. I look back at him, he's sitting toward the back of the room, and he's got his head, he's hanging his head, and I'm thinking, well, something doesn't seem right. So the assistant attorney there, Nicole Loop, is sitting there, and she's talking to the unit inspector who makes these violations. And I go up there, and the judge says, well, it looks like we're, completed this. And she says, oh, no, I think there's some other violations. I'm in front of the judge. The unit inspector leaves the courtroom, runs to the building, takes his cell phone, snaps some shots of, bricks or something on the building, comes back and says, well, there's a couple spots he missed tuck pointing. And even the judge at that point had to say, are you adding it on to Mr. Spodek? And she was like, oh no, he's like a major violator of this building. And I'm thinking to myself, across the street, the paint is sheeting off these buildings. There's broken windows around the corner. There's, from eyes view from my building, there's multiple violations. And then I started to think, you know what? It's not about me. It's not about that building. It's about Thomas Holmes. It's about his bar. And it just clicked at me at that point. Then I realized that this wasn't going to end as easily as I thought. I continued to go to court back and forth. I had talked to Thomas Holmes. he said, you know, the cops have been sitting out in front of my building. They bring up the nuisance vehicle, and he said he had a feeling that they just didn't want black people downtown. So I started to go down there. I thought, well, I'm going to find out if this is legitimate. You know, I mean, if there is a problem, I mean, I want to know about it. I couldn't find a problem. I went down. I mean, it was, you know, he would pull in 200 and 300 people because you would have, he was a good promoter. He knew how to advertise. I can remember one time he said that Wineski, which was in the public license and safety, met him in front of the building and said, you know, the problem is you're a victim of your success. And he's telling me this stuff, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Well, they took him to they took him for a due process hearing. Kind of conjured up these underage drinking and his fights, and I mean, this is no different than other bars. Matter of fact, I know other bars that did more. And they, you know, continually went after this guy, and I kind of followed it. Toward the end of, I guess it was 2010, I really started to kind of follow what was going on at the bar, and he was telling me, you know, he says, I think they're targeting me.